Ladies and gentlemen, we have another very special day, not only because Junior Tafa has left the UFC, but also because we have another day of UFC predictions. This time we're headed to Rio to watch Charles Oliveira in his home country, going up against Mateusz Gamrot, who stepped in on short notice for Rafael Fiziev on injury. So we're going to start with the early prelims, make our way up to the main event, starting off with Simon Oliveira going up against Luan Lacerda. I'm going to go with Luan Lacerda here. I just think this is a very obvious option when you break down both of their fights. Oliveira's on a 3-fight losing skid, and Lacerda, even though he's on a 2-fight losing skid and he's been gone for 2 years, he has actually shown promise in some of his fights, even though he's lost them. His Cody Stamann fight that he lost by decision to, he debatably won that fight, and then the Damon Blackshear fight, he did end up losing it, but he did have certain moments where he did look good in that fight, like when he was throwing body kicks and trying to keep the distance. So I'm going to go with Juan Lacerda here solely because he's actually looked good in some of his fights, but Simon Oliveira has looked awful in all of his fights. Yes, he did fight some pretty tough people like Daniel Marcos and David Martinez. Both of them are very tough, but Juan Lacerda also did face Damon Blackshear, who's very tough, and then Cody Stamann, he probably should have got the win for. So it's not like either one of them really has a good position to stay in the UFC, even if they win this fight, but it's not like they've been fighting the worst of the worst. So I'm going to pick Luan Lacerda just because he's shown that he's actually has some upside in his fights, when Simon Oliveira has not. Moving on, Julia Palastri going up against Karolina Kowalkiewicz. What the yeah. I probably should have tried practicing her name before this freaking episode. Karolina is a former title challenger, which is crazy to say because she is 16-9. Julia Palastri, she's 13-5, but she is a very fun, unranked fighter to watch. She is a dog when it comes to standing on the feet and brawling with people, but she also has an amazing BJJ background. The bad thing about Karolina is she used to be a title challenger, but now she's 39 years old. She's getting older, and now it just seems like she has endurance. She's a balanced fighter, so she has a little bit of stand-up and a little bit of ground game, but now that she's getting older, it just seems like she's getting worse. But I'm going to go with Julia Palastri here solely because she's going to have the more volume on the feet, and I think that her BJJ is going to be able to outwork Carolina's solely because she's younger, and she's going to have more endurance in the end. But Palacios coming off of a loss to Godinez, whereas Karolina is coming off a loss to Denise Gomes and Yasmin Lucindo. So she's coming off 2 losses, and they kind of fed her a bunch of wins later on in her career to make her record kind of go up. Because her wins before that, she went on a 3 or 4 fight win streak where she was fighting like Diana Belbita and like Vanessa Demopoulos. Like, it was a lot of bad women's fighters just to get Karolina's win record up. So I'm going to go with Julia Palastri here very convincingly. I just think that since she's younger and she's got more of that dog in her and that aggressive style at her young age, I think that's going to help her get this win. Probably by a dominant 29-28 decision. Some people will argue that 29-28 can't be dominant, but she would win 2 rounds very convincingly, I think. Moving on, Lucas Rocha going up against Stuart Nickel. This one, I was originally going to go with Stuart Nickel, but I switched to Lucas Rocha. I do think that being in Rio does have its advantages. I hate that Lucas Rocha is 5'3". Like, thinking that this dude is 6 inches shorter than me is absolutely crazy in my mind. He's coming off of his UFC debut loss to Clayton Carpenter to submission, but Carpenter's shown that he's a very good grappler. Whereas Stuart Nickel is also coming off of his UFC debut by submission loss to Jesus Aguilar. So both of them are very, very vulnerable on the ground. But Nickel has a little bit of a ground game. Rocha doesn't try to really go to the ground at all. He's known for his striking and for his power in his hands. So despite his very short 5'3" posture, he has very powerful hands for the flyweight division. And I think he's got to be able to get the knockout here. Stuart Nickel, although he does have somewhat of an ability on the feet, I think that Rocha is way quicker and way stronger than him. And I don't think Nickel's ground game is good enough to really take down Rocha and dominate if he wants it to. So I'm going to go with Lucas Rocha here. I just don't think that Stuart Nichols' ground game is good enough to where he can get a decisive win over Lucas Racha. So, gonna go with Racha in his home country. Moving on, we have Arina Alexieva going up against Beatrice Mesquita. Beatrice Mesquita. Oh boy, we have another interesting prospect coming into the UFC. We just had another one not that long ago. It was a few weeks ago with Alice Pereira. Now, I literally picked, or I was going to pick against Alice Pereira, but then I switched my pick because I'm a retard. Excuse my French. But Beatrice Mesquita is a lot different. She has a very, very highly skilled BJJ background. She has won many tournaments and she's considered one of the best BJJ women of all time. She's 34 years old. Thankfully, she's gone up against a 35-year-old, so she doesn't have to worry about age. But I think she should win this fight very convincingly. She's shown that she does have some stand-up, so I'm not worried about Alexieva dominating her on the feet. Alexieva is mainly a kickboxer, so that it does worry me a little bit. They call her Russian Ronda, but she's known for her kickboxing. She has a little bit of a ground game as well, but I think the only thing that she would want in this fight is to keep it standing. So I'm going to go with Mosquito here. I think she's going to be able to get that takedown and lock in the submission like she's done in all of her fights. She's 5-0, and I think the difference here is Alice Pereira, her striking looked very sloppy in her fights in the other promotions. But Mosquito, she's known for her submissions, and she's going to be able to get to that no matter what. I don't think Alexieva is going to be able to keep the distance the entire fight, and I think Mosquito will be able to close it and get a hold of her at some point. And then once that happens, I think Mosquito is going to be able to lock in the submission. But I think she gets in the first or second round, either late first round or early second round. But gonna go with Beatrice Mosquito here. I know a lot of people are actually probably picking Alexieva. Topology doesn't say that. Topology has 92% for Mosquito, but so I know a lot of people that I've talked to are picking Alexieva. Moving on, Vitor Petrino going up against Thomas Peterson. I don't like this pick. I'm not a huge fan of Vitor Petrino, obviously, because of his loss to Anthony Smith. He was a huge prospect going into that fight, and then he got fraud checked by Anthony Smith, which is not a good look at all. That's actually awful, because that was Anthony Smith's last win in his career. But he's going up against Thomas Peterson, which I hate Thomas Peterson's loss to Jamal Pogues, and his best win is Dontel Mays. Like, that is not giving me enough to convince myself to pick him against Vitor Petrino. Petrino's shown that he's a very balanced fighter when it comes to he has good submissions, he has good wrestling, and he has power in his hands. He is moving up to heavyweight, or excuse me, he moved up to heavyweight in his last fight against Austin Lane. I know the feet on the feet that in that fight is pretty competitive, but I still think that even if it's competitive between Petrino and Peterson, I think that where it comes, the advantages is Petrino on the ground. I think Petrino's going to be able to wrestle him to the ground. Peterson has pretty good volume striking, but I feel like he lacks athleticism, and I feel like Petrino's going to be able to take him down with his strength a lot easier. But yeah, I'm going to go with Petrino here. I think he's just obvious pick. He's the 265 favorite, and I think for good reason. I just don't think Peterson's that good. I know who I collaborated with, Soup's MMA Preview, for picks this week on Instagram. He's going with Thomas Peterson because he's very close to Thomas Peterson, but I'm gonna go with Petrino. I don't really like Thomas Peterson in this fight. Moving on, we have Rafael Filo going up against Clayton Carpenter. I know my boy Jacob from We Want Picks is going with Rafael Filo for his underdog lock of the week, but I'm gonna go with Clayton Carpenter here. Rafael Filo is very known for almost submitting Muhammad Mukayev with a knee bar, but then he ended up getting submitted shortly after. But then he fought Daniel Barras and Odi Osborne, submitted both of them, and then he's coming off a loss to Alan Nascimento. So we've kind of seen him struggle to other very high-level grapplers. So that's why I'm going to go with Clayton Carpenter here. He's the minus 110. Actually, it's near even, so no one's the favorite in this fight. But Clayton Carpenter's only loss in the UFC so far is the Tajir Ulankabev, which is very, Very good loss. That's not anything to be ashamed of because I think he's a very good rising prospect. And it was a unanimous decision loss, so it's not like he got finished. Um, he's also coming off a submission to Lucas Rocha, who is a very aggressive fighter on the feet. I don't think Filo is going to be nearly as aggressive as Rocha on the feet, although I do think Filo has the advantage striking in this fight. But I do think Carpenter will end up getting this one done. I think that he'll be able to get a hold of him, and I do think he'll be able to out grapple him in this fight. I think he'll be on the ground for majority of this fight, and I think that's where Carpenter is going to show that he's a very good grappler. Filo will have some moments in this fight. I do think it's going to be a very, very close fight. I'm going to have it 29-28 split decision for Clayton Carpenter, so not very confident. I do get why Jacob is picking Rafael Filo because I think in terms of finishes, I think Filo definitely has the better chance to win this fight, and normally that's who I go with, but I don't know. I just have a feeling that Clayton Carpenter is going to outwork him all 3 rounds. So I'm going to go with Clayton Carpenter, but Rafael Filo is not a bad pick if you want to go with him as well. Next up, moving on to the main card, we have Lucas Almeida going up against Michael Aswell. I'm going to go with Lucas Almeida here. I was originally going to go with Michael Aswell, but looking at his fights, he doesn't really seem like he should be UFC material. The Blagioki loss, kind of questioning if, it was a decision loss, so we're kind of questioning if that's a good loss to have because Blagioki just lost to Mason Jones, so now we're questioning if Mason Jones is the next big thing. He also lost to Bogdan Grad by split decision on the Contender Series, so he's looking for his first UFC win. Dana White told him to go get a win in a different promotion to get signed to UFC, so he beat some 8-3 guy. Who's now on a 2-fight losing streak or 3-fight losing streak after this fight. So who knows? And it was only a split decision. So it was a very close fight he had with a dude from another promotion, and he's on a 3-fight losing streak. So not really a good look for Michael Aswell. He's only 10-3. So we've seen him lose multiple times before. But his whole thing is a stand-up. He's very good with stand-up. So that's what he's going to want to aim for in this fight. He's not going to want to get taken down. Luke Almeida, on the other hand, is a very balanced fighter. We see him normally lose to these very good strikers, but I don't think Michael Aswell is the same level striker that Danny Silva is. Luke Almeida lost a split decision to Danny Silva. I think the difference between Silva and Aswell is the head movement. Silva's head movement is absolutely insane. Michael Aswell doesn't have that. Michael Aswell has pretty good striking like Silva, but it's not very high volume. It's always in your face, but he doesn't throw a whole lot. And he definitely doesn't have the head movement as Silva. So if Almeida wants to throw back with him, he's going to be able to do that. Aswell gets hit very easily. And I don't know. I just think that Almeida is more balanced. If it goes to the ground, it will be from Almeida. It won't be from Aswell. Aswell's going to want to get back up to the feet, and he's going to be nervous if this fight gets taken down to the ground at all. So I'm going to go with Lucas Almeida solely because he has the ground game advantage, and I think that him showing that he can win that 3rd round against Danny Silva, I think that he's going to be more aggressive early on, showing that, oh crap, I can actually strike with a guy like this. Because he won that 3rd round against Danny Silva. Silva won the first 2. But I think Almeida is going to come out aggressive in this fight against Michael Aswell. Whether that's going to the ground or whether that's in the striking. I think Almeida is going to come out aggressive and get the win. He's the plus 135 underdog here, so I'm going to go with the underdog. Moving on to the second fight on the main card, excuse me. Ricardo Ramos going against Con Ofli. Whew. This is an interesting main card fight. Ricardo Ramos, very vulnerable to submissions, to high-level BJJ guys, and then he's coming off a loss to Cheap Mariscal. But Cheap Mariscal is showing to be one of the better unranked fighters in this division at 145. He's 1-3 in his last 4, coming off of a loss to Cheap Mariscal, like I said, but then also a split decision win to Josh Kulabau. Well, on the other hand, we have Con Ofli, who's 0-2 in the UFC, but it's also to Myron Santos knockout and Muhammad Naimed unanimous decision. So Ofli hasn't gotten a win in the UFC yet, and Ramos is not having a good start to his UFC career. So very hard fight to choose here. Ricardo Ramos throws these very, very entertaining highlight knockout kicks and punches. but they tend to not land. But here's my thing with Con Ofley. Ofley doesn't really do anything good. I don't like Con Ofley at all, and I don't think he deserves to be in the UFC. The thing I can actually respect about Ricardo Ramos is his flashy kickboxing style. So I'm gonna go with Ramos and just pray that he gets the knockout here. He is the minus 210 favorite. They're also in Brazil, so I'm gonna have that factor as well. But I just don't like Con Ofley. I don't think he does anything well. Ricardo Ramos, I really love his kickboxing style. So I hope he brings that kickboxing style and gets a highlight flash KO. But I mean, Ofley does have a little bit of a submission game, so you could watch out for that against Ramos. But I'm gonna go with Ramos here just because Ofley's takedowns aren't the best, and he's definitely uh gonna have the advantage on the feet. Ramos is gonna have the advantage on the feet. Ofley does not really have good striking, so even though Ramos can get hit a lot, so can Ofley, so it's not really an advantage for either one of them. But I'm gonna go with Ricardo Ramos just because he has very flashy kickboxing style that I think is gonna give problems to Con Ofley. This is gonna be a very quick predictions episode. Moving up, we have Jonata Diniz going up against Mario Pinto. Now, this has kind of gone back and forth between who's the favorite or whatnot. Jonata Diniz is currently the favorite at minus 110. Mario Pinto is plus 115, so it's gone back and forth. I'm gonna go with Mario Pinto here. Jonata Diniz, and don't get me wrong, I'm not going against Jonata Diniz just because he's a kickboxer, that heavyweight, just like Junior Tafa. I know we just talked about how Junior Tafa just left the UFC. Don't blame him; he sucked. But Jonata Diniz was a very dominant heavyweight kickboxer, so he's coming over to the UFC, and he's looked very good so far. Watch his debut against Austin Lane, left hook KO. Unanimous decision to Carl Williams. Lost to Mycene Tibera badly, but that's Mycene Tibera. And then, although his last fight against Alvin Hines, though, yes, Alvin Hines was undefeated. He didn't look the best against Alvin Hines, where for Mario Pinto, dominates Lucas Camacho, and then Austin Lane. It took him a little bit longer than he should, and Austin Lane did have a little bit of momentum in the fight at some points, but Pinto did end up getting the right hook KO. So I'm gonna go with Mario Pinto here solely because he's gonna have the wrestling advantage. Jonata Diniz, I think he's just a better version of Junior Tafa, if I'm being honest. He's got better kickboxing than Junior Tafa, but his takedown defense sucks exactly like Tafa's. So Mario Pinto has a wrestling background, so I think Pinto's gonna be able to use his wrestling in this fight. Pinto also has the stronger punches, I believe. Denise obviously has the better style when it comes to stand up, but I'm gonna go with Mario Pinto here. He has the stronger hands and he has the way better wrestling for a 3-round fight, whereas Jonata Diniz just has the better striking style. Denise sometimes is conservative too, which I think that'll play in favor of Mario Pinto. So I'm gonna go with Mario Pinto here. He is the undefeated fighter in this case, but whoever wins this fight will probably be hyped up a little bit in the heavyweight division as a prospect. Even though I don't think either one of them has really shown anything yet. So I'm gonna go with Mario Pinto here as the current underdog, but that's probably gonna change to him being the favorite, I'm guessing, since he's the prospect in this scenario. Next up, we have Vicente Leque going up against Joel Alvarez. Going with Joel Alvarez here. Very easy pick for me. He is my lock of the week. Me and Soup's MMA preview both agreed that Joel Alvarez would be our lock of the week. So that post will be coming out later, probably tomorrow. But Vicente Leque is getting older. Yes, he's only 33, but he's been in the UFC for so long. I remember when he was like 11-1 in the UFC at the time because they just kept feeding him bums. Excuse me. Then he started fighting the lower unranked or the higher upranked tier fighters and the ranked fighters from 10 to 15 range, and he was just going 50-50 with them. So that's kind of how it's been the rest of his UFC career so far. Lost to Jeff Neal, win to Rafael dos Anjos, who was old at the time, lost to Joaquin Buckley, win versus Themba Garimbo, and then most recently just got submitted by Kevin Holland 3 months ago. Joel Alvarez, he's looked very good in the UFC so far. He's on 3-fight win streak. His only losses was his UFC debut and to Arman Sarukian. Yes, the Armin Tsarukyan win or loss, excuse me, was very, very dominant. But at the same time, it's Armin Tsarukyan who's the number one contender. So Joel Alvarez since then though has looked dominant. Darce choked to Mark Diakise, knocked out Elvis Brenner, who's a very tough unranked fighter, and then even knocked out Jakar Kloss, who just beat why am I forgetting his name? Edson Barboza. Excuse me. Alvarez is the minus 500 favorite here, and for very good reason. Alvarez has everything. He has submissions. He has a very clean stand up. Whereas Vicente Luque, he kind of just prays for his submission nowadays. He's only getting worse, so he doesn't really have that good a stand up. He still has heart, obviously. He's always been a brawler on the feet. So if Alvarez and Luque stay on the feet, it could be potentially fight of the night. But if it gets taken down to the ground, expect Alvarez to lock in that Darce choke or that rear naked choke. But I'm expecting Alvarez to get a first round submission and continue this hype train. He moved up to welterweight for this fight, which I'm very excited to see how he does. I think he's going to look great so far. His training camp has looked awesome. So give me Joel Alvarez here. Very confident pick here to get the first round submission over Vicente Luque. Moving up to the co-main, we have Deiveson Figueiredo going up against Mateusz Jackson. Now, when I first looked at this fight, I thought, oh yeah, this is easily Deiveson Figueiredo. Why is Mateusz Jackson a minus 280 favorite? Am I missing something? Odds makers, are we okay? Why are we making this a minus 280 for Mateusz Jackson? Are we really hyping up a decision win to Daniel Marcos and a knockout over Damon Blackshear worthy enough to be a minus 280 favorite over a former dominant flyweight champion? And yes, he's on a 2-fight losing streak, but the losses are to Peter Yan by decision, and he got injured to Corey Sandhagen. Like, I don't get what the odds are doing here, but Figueiredo should definitely be the minus 200 favorite in this fight. Mateusz Jackson does have a huge size advantage. Don't get me wrong. He is 5 inches taller and has a 7-inch reach advantage. So he has a dominant disadvantage, or he has a dominant advantage in terms of height and reach. But Figueiredo's fought this style before. He fought Corey Sandhagen, and he did have certain moments in that fight before he got injured. And then he also beat Chito Vera in one of his bantamweight fights. I think it was his debut fight. So we've seen Figueiredo fight these taller, lengthier guys before. So it's nothing new for him. I don't think that it's that big of a deal as people are making it seem. Everyone's like, oh, look at the size advantage. I'm going with Mateusz Jackson. Don't be fooled so easily. The only thing I'm really worried about with Figueiredo is the knee injury. I don't know how he's really recovered from the knee injury, but I'm going to trust that he's fine because, I mean, yes, it was only 5 months ago, which kind of worries me, but I don't think he would have taken this fight unless he knew he was good. So I'm going to go with Deiveson Figueiredo here. I think in terms of grappling, yes, Mateusz Jackson has a little bit of a wrestling background, but his main focus is obviously his striking. He's shown that he has knockout power, but Figueiredo is going to show that he is a way better grappler than Mateusz Jackson. He's probably going to submit Mateusz Jackson, honestly, or just dominate him on the ground for 3 rounds. Figueiredo still has fast hands on the feet. Nothing's changed. Yes, he's 37 years old. But I don't know. People are counting him out really easily in this fight, and I don't understand why. I don't think Mateusz Jackson deserves these odds whatsoever. So I'm going with Deiveson Figueiredo here. I'm not going to disrespect him at all. I think this is a very insulting odds, and I think it's very insulting how Jackson's a favorite here. It's a 50-50 pick, and for very good reason. Since the odds are Figueiredo as the underdog. So I'm going to go with Figueiredo here. Probably, honestly, by second round submission. I'm going to go with Figueiredo, but to get a finish too, because I don't get, like, we saw him lose on the ground to Daniel Marcos. Yes, he won the fight. Daniel Marcos held him down for 6 minutes, and Daniel Marcos is a striker. But yet we're thinking that Figueiredo's not going to dominate him on the ground. What are we doing, people? I'm picking Figueiredo to win as the 220 underdog. Holy crap. Moving up to the main event, we have Charles Oliveira going up against Mateusz Gamrot. He was originally supposed to fight Rafael Fiziev. My pick doesn't change here. I'm going with Charles Oliveira. Now, this one, I was originally thinking Mateusz Gamrot initially when I first saw the fight was announced, but I ended up going to Charles Oliveira solely because we've never seen Mateusz Gamrot have any finishing ability. Like, I was going through all of his fights. He's never looked like he had the finishing ability, except for one fight, and that was Jalen Turner, which was a split decision, which some people thought Jalen Turner actually won the fight. So the only fight where he looked actually dangerous in was the Jalen Turner fight. He is very dominant wrestling, which is what he relies on. He relies on winning decisions with his wrestling, but he never locks in submissions. His stand-up is good to an extent. I mean, Jalen Turner was beating him up on the feet. He had to rely on his wrestling to get him the split decision win, but Jalen Turner was beating him on the feet. Dan Hooker beat him on the feet. Yes, those are lengthier guys, but I still don't think that's going to change the fact that Charles Oliveira is going to have the advantage stand-up. Charles Oliveira has the advantage when it comes to finishing ability. Charles Oliveira has way better BJJ. Wrestling, it's going to be more competitive, but I think over time, I think Oliveira is going to be able to find sneaky submissions that Mateusz Gamrot isn't going to expect. Because we've seen it multiple times. We've seen Oliveira lock in 2 very sneaky submissions over Arman. Yes, Arman was good enough to get out of them, but I think that Gamrot won't be able to get out of them. And I'm going to trust Oliveira's finishing ability over Gamrot's wrestling ability because Oliveira also has very good wrestling. But I don't know. Gamrot, he debatably also lost to Arman too, so that sucks. He did just come off a win to Ludwig Klein, which was a prospect at the time. But yeah, I don't know. Besides that win, I mean, the leg injury to Rafael Fiziev, so it's like, all right, that win's a fluke. He beat old Rafael dos Anjos, beat Jalen Turner, debatably lost to him. So Gamrot has a lot of flukes in his record. So I'm going to go with Charles Oliveira here. He's actually the underdog right now, plus 100, which is kind of crazy. I thought he'd be the favorite just because of the Rio crowd. Only thing I'm really worried about him is he's coming off a very quick knockout to Taporia 3 months ago. But I don't know. I feel like he wouldn't do it unless if he was ready for this. He was just at the Contender Series too, so I think they wouldn't have him there unless if, he was completely fine. So I think he'll be good for this. I think he'll get the submission or even the knockout, honestly. I could see him getting the knockout because sometimes when 2 wrestlers face each other, it turns up into a stand-up fight. And if that's the case, I do think Oliveira is going to be able to have that. Now, I don't agree with MMA Guru on this. I don't know why he made this point. He said that Gamrot gets knocked down a lot in his fight. Or excuse me, he said Oliveira gets knocked down in a lot of his fights. So does Gamrot. We've seen that in multiple of his fights where he got knocked down. The Gamrot, or excuse me, the Jalen Turner and Dan Hooker fight, he both got knocked down in. So basically, any striker that has any sort of aggression ends up knocking him down. The Rafael Fiziev fight, he probably would have got knocked down in too. So we've seen Gamrot get knocked down a lot. I don't get why there's a notion that it's only Oliveira. But both fighters can be vulnerable to aggressive power strikers that just come forward at you. So if one of them becomes aggressive, we could see a knockout early, but I think the better chance for one of them being aggressive here is Charles Oliveira. So I'm going to go Charles Oliveira to win this headliner for UFC Rio. It's a very stacked card. If I had to pick a potential fight of the night, I do think Oliveira and Gamrot has a chance. I don't think Figueiredo and Jackson has a chance. I really think Figueiredo's going to dominate him, or Jackson gets a first-round knockout. But I don't think he's going to get the knockout. I think LeCue versus Alvarez has a pretty good chance. There's really not a whole lot of fights that I could see. Yeah, just really those two. Maybe Lucas Almeida and Michael Aswell could be a sleeper one. But yeah, between LeCue and Alvarez and Oliveira and Gamrot, those are probably the only 2 I'd say have the chance to win fight of the night. Performance of the night, Jackson could get one if he gets a upset knockout. I still think it's going to be an upset if he wins. Because even though he's the favorite in this fight, I still think it'll be a huge upset. Because Jackson's ranked 15th. Figueiredo's, I think, like 7 or 8, I'm pretty sure. Might even be lower than that. But yeah, unfortunately, Walter Walker's fight against Muhammad Usman ended up getting canceled, which sucks. Usman got injured. We were going to get an easy pick there with Walter Walker. We were supposed to see another heel hook win, but unfortunately, That got canceled. Gabriel Bonfim versus Randy Brown got rescheduled, which sucks. And it sucks for Vicente Luque because he was originally going up against Ponzinibbio. And now you have to face Joel Alvarez, who's one of the best unranked prospects now. So it's unfortunate for him, but I mean, he's not going to complain. He's fought so many dogs in his career. But with that being said, those are my predictions for UFC Rio. It's going to be a very entertaining card. Again, I think the Rio crowd's going to bring it. There's a Brazilian fighter in every single fight. So looking forward to it. Can't wait to watch it. I appreciate you guys listening to this podcast episode. We'll see you guys next time.